Welcome everyone to Movie Nation, where we talk about the movies like it's a national pastime. I'm your host, Ken Reels, and today on the show we are talking Miss Bala, Movie Trilogies, and of course, How to Train Your Dragon 3, which I got to see super early, 3 weeks early to be exact. Welcome to the show. So, everyone, welcome to the show. It's Movie Nation, and of course, we've got also some news for you. We got some Leigh Whannell news, because of course Leigh Whannell has been signed on to not one but 2 major projects. At least one of them's rumored, the other is actually legit. So, welcome everyone to Movie Nation. We talk about the movies like it's a national pastime. I've said that already, and we are live here on twitch.tv/KenReels. But first of all, let's go ahead and go right into the major releases for this week. And we're going to start off with Miss Bala, the remake of a film from 2011, which I didn't even know existed until very recently. Miss Bala is a remake of a 2011 Spanish language film from Mexico, and this remake stars Gina Rodriguez, the sister of Michelle Rodriguez, and honestly, Gina has done a lot of voiceover work in the past, and you can actually hear her on the new series from Netflix. She is the voice of Carmen Sandiego in the new Carmen Sandiego show over on there. And Miss Bala is good. It lost me at times. There's a bit of this film that kind of lost me as it progressed, but it wasn't bad per se. It wasn't a bad film. I think there are a few bits where it kind of falters, specifically in the early moments of the film, because there's a sequence early on, right after the whole shooting in the club, where she goes to the cafe next door and she falls asleep, and then she wakes up the next morning, no one's in the cafe. I don't know how that really would work in the grand scheme of things. You'd think someone would have woken her up, because there's no one in the cafe. That's a little weird. That was a little bit where I started to waver in terms of suspension of disbelief. Like, I highly doubt that legit would work that way. So, what can you say? But then, when the movie actually started to get going, she ends up falling into this drug dealer who's really good. And this is also the moment in the movie where I started to recognize how good the score was. The score for this film is really, really good. I was really interested in how this score panned out. It was really well done. Like, I was incredibly enamored with how the score for this film played out, because especially when, of course, the drug dealer kind of forces her to sleep with him, and there's a bit after that where you have this score, and it has this interesting touch to it that I kind of like. I instantly recognized, like, this is interesting. I'm interested in this. And this film is fine. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's bad. There are there were moments early on where I started to think it was a bad movie, but then the movie kind of started to get me back into it. And I was like, okay, this could be interesting. This could be really interesting. And overall, like, I think this film is good. It is not great. I wouldn't say it's average either, because it's filmed meticulously and immaculate, because this is the same director that brought us the one of Heath Ledger's most prolific performances in Dogs of shit. I forget the name of the movie. God damn it. But it is easily one of the just the direction of this film was really well done. Like, absolutely well done. And I can't fault it for that aspect of it. What I can fault it for is that opening 20 minutes is a little wavery. So I would generally give Miss Bala like an 8 out of 10. It's not a bad film. It's not a great film, but it is not what I would consider an outright bad film. I've seen way worse, even this year, to be exact. Miss Bala, when it gets to the core of the film, which is talking about a very strong woman who finds her strength as the movie progresses, it was solid. It's a solid film. I'm super happy that I watched it, and I would recommend going to see it. I will say there are some politics in it and some bits where you can start reading into it where people might take issue. People might take issue with it. I'm not saying you will, but I would understand if people might have an issue with it. Just in terms of its gender politics and what it's saying. As for my personal perspective, I think this is a great, strong female piece, and it is worth your time to sit through. Like 100%. It's a solid 8 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed it. And, like, I'm interested in seeing the original film, seeing how that compares, because it's not... I can see where people would argue, oh, I like the original more, blah, blah, blah. But I really dug Gina Rodriguez's performance. Anthony Mackie's in here for a little bit. And it was just a solid film all around. I enjoyed myself. And it was definitely worth the time. And that leads us into the special screening. I got to see How to Train Your Dragon 3: The Hidden World 3 weeks early. And that is absolutely one of the coolest things that I've done this year. How to Train Your Dragon 3: The Hidden World is taking place a little bit after the events of How to Train Your Dragon 2, as well as, I believe, the end of the series, the final season of the series, which is available on Netflix. Thank you, Netflix, for that, for picking that up after Cartoon Network completely dropped it. But overall, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is a great time. It is a great time at the movies, and there are some moments where I took my mother to go see it because we both are big fans of the franchise, and overall, like, we both really enjoyed the first one, and the second one we've seen on cable multiple times, And so I thought it was a fair Mother's Day gift, birthday gift, because her birthday's in January, to take her to go see this week. So the two of us went to go see it yesterday, and it was a really good film. I really dug the animation is spectacular. Visually, this film is great across the board. I think the best of it is the idea that this is one of the most beautiful films, and like, honestly, I want to go see this in 3D, because there are sequences where I'm like, wow, just imagine seeing this in 3D in IMAX 3D on a bright fucking screen. Beautiful work, and it pops so well. And I can't say any more other than this movie just pops when you see it on screen. I would see it on the biggest screen in 3D if you can. If you don't see it in 3D, it's still visually stunning. But wow, I just can't believe how great that is. And the score is a great highlight. I really dug the score. I'm looking forward to just picking up the score for this film, because it just hits me in the feels at times. There's a great sequence near the end of the film where I was in tears. And then there are two major moments in the film. You see it in one of the trailers of Hiccup and his dad, played by his dad Stoic, played by Gerard Butler. You have two sequences where Hiccup looks back and thinks about the stuff his father told him when he was a little boy. And it just, there's a bit right after Stoic thinks his wife died, and he's crying by the fire, and young little Hiccup comes out of bed, and Stoic gives him this speech of, there's no love without loss. And it is a very great speech, and it brought a tear to my eye. It was such an amazing speech. This film is a great cap to the How to Train Your Dragon series, if you count the TV stuff. This is a great cap to the movie trilogy, as it were. It is absolutely amazing. I think this takes place like a year or two after the events of the second film. I think it's like maybe a year at most. And the villain is menacing enough. I don't think he's a great villain. Very much akin to the villain in the second film. I wouldn't say the How to Train Your Dragon series is a highlight when it comes to villains. I think they service the plot very well, but that's about it. I don't think they are in any way a good, like, top tier villain categories. I think they service the plot, and that's about it. I don't think they really have any reason to be any more than that. And then you have this whole situation with Toothless and the female Night Fury, or the Light Fury as they dub it. it is, there are some really good comedic moments to that bit. And there are a few bits in this film where I feel like there's a bunch on the cutting room floor. Like, this movie could be 2 hours long, but they cut it down to like an hour 45, hour and a half, and that's fine. I would love to see what they cut out, because there are some moments where I'm just like, kind of like, you could fit a bit more into this, but it doesn't necessarily hinder the movie in any way, shape, or form. Like, overall, this film is just spectacular on every conceivable level, and I just thoroughly enjoyed every single minute of this film. It was that freaking good. And like, when it comes out in 3 weeks, totally recommend it. Go see it on the biggest, best screen you can. If you can see it in IMAX 3D, I would recommend see it in IMAX 3D. It is going to be a spectacle to watch. It is a very good film. I'm looking forward to going to see it again in 3 weeks. Actually, I'm probably going to go see it again in 3 weeks, because it is that flippin' good. And so, we're going to go ahead and transition over to the news. And the first news on the docket, ladies and gentlemen, is the first trailer for Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious spinoff, is out. And this is Jason Statham and The Rock in a awesome trailer. And overall, this film rocks. This film is absolutely looking forward to this, because now you have Idris Elba as a super powered human. Now we have superpowers in this universe. And like that moment where it's just like, who the heck are you, bad guy? This film does not take itself seriously in any way, shape, or form. I like the joke of The Rock just like taking the protein powder and just chewing it as cereal. That's a funny joke. And I like the symmetry of how some of these shots are put, where you have The Rock and Jason Statham of two sides of the same coin, kind of point, and the champagne of just like boom right in the Adam's apple, like ow. And then you guys are gonna have to work together. No way, this guy's an asshole. Like that, there's some great bits, and then you have just like the music for the trailer with them just like, we gotta be friends in this situation, and it is so good. Like, they play off each other so well. They played off each other in the last film really well, and this one just like really good. And then you have just like Idris Elba is superpowered, just beating the crap out of them, and it looks like exactly what I want. Big stupid action, like seriously really good. And then this sequence where you have them going down the building, and Hobbs is just like, I'm jumping down, and Jason Statham is like, I'm gonna take the elevator. And The Rock's just like, hey buddy, and there's the smack. Fuck you. Bravo, bravo. It's just, it is exactly the kind of humor I want out of this film, and I look forward to, um, I look forward to it. And of course, the trailer is going to be attached to the Super Bowl, which is actually today as I'm recording this. This is Super Bowl Sunday, but the trailer is going to be on the Super Bowl list of stuff. We got a poster. We got The Rock and Jason Statham down the yellow line, and they're just two sides of the same coin. I like this. I like the dynamic, and I'm looking forward to this film when it comes out in, I believe, June. I believe the release date's June. I don't necessarily know. This is the same director as Deadpool 2, David Leitch, who is very much bringing his humor to this film. Like you can tell from the trailer. No, it's coming out in August 2nd, which is a pretty decent release date. Like, considering it's avoiding Spider-Man, it's avoiding Avengers Endgame. By then, those two films are going to teeter out in terms of box office. So I think this is going to be the hit of August. Like, there's always one hit in August, and I think this is definitely going to be the one. And so we go into upgrades. Leigh Whannell is possibly tapped to write the new Escape from New York remake. And this is according to THR, Leigh Whannell is attached to kickstart Escape with a new vision for the project that sources say will retain elements of the original but bring new ideas to the table. One of Whannell's goals is to avoid the bloated tentpole remake path that's afflicted reboots of the 80s era movies such as RoboCop and Total Recall. Not only earlier this week, Leigh Whannell was announced officially to be writing and directing a new version of The Invisible Man for Universal. He's now also supposedly attached to this project. I'm looking forward to Invisible Man, specifically because Lee is a very, very good filmmaker. I'm really excited to see what he brings to the table. And him doing a Escape from New York, sure, I'm cool with that. Escape from New York is a very, very cool film. It's cheesy as hell, and I'm looking forward to what they can do with casting a new Snake, because I mean, Kurt Russell is iconic. Like, you can't beat someone who's iconic as Snake Plissken. But I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he could do with an Escape from New York, because I loved Upgrade. Some of his other films, he did a film about a zombie apocalypse breaking out in the middle of in the literal middle of an event during school, and that was pretty good. And then I'm looking forward to what he does. And the next thing on the docket is James Gunn is officially tapped to direct Suicide Squad 2 for Warner Brothers. This is also coming from THR. And he is essentially rebooting it from David Ayer's original, which starred Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn and Will Smith as Deadshot. There was very less than an enthusiastic reaction from critics. It snagged $746 million at the worldwide box office, spawned a spin-off with Birds of Prey, The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn with Margot Robbie as the star, and that actually started production this week. There was a trailer that dropped, just kind of giving you a preview of what those characters look like. After the whole thing with James Gunn leaving Guardians of the Galaxy because Disney fired him over some really poor tweets. Like, they were bad jokes, but overall they were still jokes, and they're very, very old. Back when he was still working for Full Moon, these are old jokes, and that was the audience he was working with at the time. So honestly, I didn't think he deserved to be fired, but that's a whole nother story. But him being tapped to do Suicide Squad 2, awesome. Looking forward to what he can do. He's already been tapped to write the film, so he's writing and directing now, and I'm looking to see what this Suicide Squad sequel goes, and it's basically going to be it's going to be a soft reboot, much like Aquaman is being a soft reboot to the entire DCEU as a whole. And it's interesting. I think James Gunn could fit Suicide Squad really well. I think he can bring some great grit to it, and he's also got his produced dark superhero tale Brightburn, which is what if Superman was a friggin' villain. And that film, I look forward to that. That's coming out in May, and that's actually being released from Warner Brothers themselves. So I think Warner kind of picked up James Gunn's vibe and has been courting him to direct Suicide Squad 2. So I think this is a good fit. I'm looking forward to what James Gunn will do with Suicide Squad. And also, going back to the DCEU, Ben Affleck is officially done as Batman. I'm very sad that he's not going to be Batman anymore, but I think for what happened with the DCEU in its early days with Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, Suicide Squad, and Justice League, those are the only three that Ben is going to be doing as Batman / Bruce Wayne. I think he's going to go down as a portrayal that should have been better. Like, it should have been propped up by better scripts, better films in general. I think he could have been the ultimate Batman, but it was bad scripts and bad films that hindered his performance, and people will look back and say Ben was a very, very good actor for this role, but it just didn't work out in terms of studio politics and whatnot. What I will, and then this is also coming out from a THR interview with the director of The Batman, Matt Reeves, and this is his statement on what his Batman is going to be. It's very much a point of view driven noir Batman tale. It's told very squarely on his shoulders, and I hope it's going to be a story that will be thrilling but also emotional. It's more Batman in his detective mode than we've seen him in other films. The comics have a history of that. He's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and it's not necessarily been part of what the movies have been. I'd love this to be one where we can go on that journey of tracking down the criminals and trying to solve a crime. It's going to allow his character to have an arc so that we can go through a transformation. Now, this kind of noir detective thing, and also an earlier statement that it's going to include multiple villains, I have a feeling he's going to take elements of the Hush storyline. There's a high chance that he's going to be incorporating a bit of Hush. It wouldn't surprise me to kind of introduce Hush as a character because the Hush storyline incorporates multiple villains, or even not even the Hush storyline, a Long Halloween kind of story. I think it could work very well and kind of show the detective side of Batman. And the actual release date for the Batman has actually been set. It's going to be a June 2021 release date. I'm really looking forward to what Matt Reeves will do. I'm sad Ben isn't going to be a part of it, but I'm really happy that this film is going to come out. Speaking of Matt Reeves, we're going to be talking about movie trilogies, and more specifically, some of the best movie trilogies out there. Personally, one of my favorites is one that Matt Reeves actually is a part of, and that is the recent Planet of the Apes trilogy, which consists of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes. Matt Reeves directed Dawn and War. I think Dawn and War kind of are brother and sister to each other. They're very connected in its style. I really, really dug. I really dug War, and more specifically War, because War caps off the trilogy, but also kind of caps off the story of Caesar. And Caesar is played by Andy Serkis, who does a phenomenal performance. Very, very good performance from him. And talking about some other trilogies, I would consider, despite it having multiple other movies in the saga, the Saw trilogy, which is 1, 2, and 3. And then there's the second trilogy, which is 4, 5, and 6. You could really separate those two in terms of story arcs, and I think they're great pieces of horror. I really dig the first Saw. I think the first Saw is great, and the second and third are also spectacular. And some of the other trilogies that come to mind, let me think. I'm just looking at my shelf here, and you can't talk about a trilogy without talking about the most prolific trilogy of all time in terms of film, and that is the Hobbit trilogy. No, I'm joking. It's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is a master class in filmmaking. You can't say you're a movie fan if you haven't at least have some knowledge of Lord of the Rings. You might not like fantasy, and that's fine. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is a trilogy that you can't not have some kind of precursor knowledge for. And overall, I will say, the Lord of the Rings trilogy is, I'm much more in love with what the Hobbit trilogy is. Now, I know I have a very, very differing opinion on that notion, but the Hobbit trilogy to me feels very, very good. And I think that's also because back when the final film came out, I went with my buddy to go see all three back to back to back. And I think when you look at those films as a trilogy and as a one cohesive film, I think that is a great bit. And speaking of cohesion, with The Hobbit, there is a cut of the film called There and Back Again. And this is a fan cut, and I really, really dig this fan cut. In fact, you can find it if you search online for it. It is out there. Let me just double check myself. And this is There and Back Again, Hobbit's Journey recut. And this is details. It is a 3-hour cut of all 3 films back to back to back, and it really just shows how much cohesion there is between all 3 of the Hobbit films. If you don't have the time to go see to watch all 3 Hobbit films, which come down to about 10 hours, you can actually just watch this There and Back Again cut, which I really, really dig. Like, this is a really, really cool kind of recut of The Hobbit, and you can actually watch it. You can just go ahead and watch that online. So you can go ahead and find that online. I'm not going to link anything because, again, copyright and whatnot. And Warner Brothers is very, very iffy about their copyright. But overall, like, I really dig the Hobbit trilogy. A lot of people are naysayers about that, and I really dig it. I really dig the Hobbit trilogy. And there's nothing more. You could argue the Thor trilogy, which a lot of people rag on Thor the Dark World in terms of Marvel films. And yes, I do think Thor the Dark World is the weakest of the entire MCU, but overall, like, I think the Thor trilogy is a good trilogy, even though there's probably going to be more Thor films. I think Thor Ragnarok is finally a moment where you just, like, where everyone's on the same page, and you have characters that get Thor. You have directors and writers that get this character. Chris Hemsworth finally shows off his comedy chops. And I think Thor Ragnarok is a great, great film of itself, but I think as a whole, we kind of wrap up a lot in that Ragnarok film that has been set up in the previous 2 Thor films. And when Thor Dark World came out, I'm like, this is fun. I dig this film. It's not a great film, but I really dug it. And the first Thor I thought was really cool. I really enjoyed what its director brought to the table, and it overall was a very, very fun film. I really enjoyed what it brought to the table, and then also you have going into animation, you have 2 DreamWorks trilogies. You have the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, which is concluding with Hidden World, as we talked about earlier in the episode. How to Train Your Dragon 3 is a great cap to this trilogy, and I think watching all 3 films back to back will have a tremendous experience. You'll have a tremendous experience watching all 3 films back to back, and I look forward to actually doing that in the future when How to Train Your Dragon 3 comes out on Blu-ray, because I'm sure they'll have a nice little trilogy box set for that, as well as going also into DreamWorks, the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. That is Kung Fu Panda 1, 2, and 3. I love these films. Kung Fu Panda 2 comes as the biggest moment where I'm like, this is great animation that can move anyone. Because when I went to go see Kung Fu Panda 2 in the theater, I will always remember this moment because there was a little boy and his mother in the theater with me and my buddy when we went to go see it. Pretty early screening in the morning of How to Train Your Kung Fu Panda 3. Or Kung Fu Panda 2, sorry. And there's a moment in Kung Fu Panda 2 with Po and his mother. And I just happened to look to my right and see the little boy and his mom. And the little boy was in tears. And he just looked up at his mom and gave her the biggest hug you could ever imagine. And that just is a statement to make for a film to move someone that amazingly, and it you just can't deny it. And you can argue there's a couple of other trilogies out there in the world. I haven't actually watched these films yet because the trilogy isn't out yet, but I look forward to sitting through the Code Geass Lelouch trilogy of films, which is a recap of 1, 2, as well as a sequel film. And that I thoroughly look forward to seeing what that brings at the end of March. I'm looking forward to watching that. And there's a couple of other trilogies like Star Wars, of course I'm gonna talk about Star Wars when it comes to trilogies. The Star Wars, the original trilogy, is of course near and dear to my heart. It's near and dear to many people's hearts. I was introduced to Star Wars via the 90s cuts of the original trilogy. I would have loved to have seen the original cuts. There are a couple of ways to possibly see some of them, like the despecialized editions are out there. And then there are also fan cuts of the prequel trilogies, the prequel trilogy films. And I've actually watched those, and those are really good cuts of these films and kind of generally the things that you want to remember from the prequel trilogy. And there are some interesting things you can do with the prequel trilogy by cutting out a lot of the jibber jabber, cutting Jar Jar completely out of the movie in all the films, and it's interesting. It's an interesting take. And then we have the end of this year is the end of this new trilogy of Star Wars. People will argue back and forth between how The Last Jedi was so divisive, but overall, like, I'm of the belief that The Last Jedi was a good film. That's just me. I know I am on a different side of a lot of people. I was really happy with how The Last Jedi did its stuff, but you have your opinion on things, and I totally respect that. That's just my opinion. And there are plenty of there are actually a lot of trilogies that are concluding this year, come to think of it, because we have How to Train Your Dragon, we have Star Wars, and more specifically in terms of anime films, we've got the conclusion of the Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, what will be capped off as a trilogy, that from Studio Wit, that is coming to a close. this year, which is really cool. This fall in Japan, I'm assuming we're going to get the release of that in theaters at some point in early next year, early 2020. And like there are great trilogies out there, and even you could talk about Neil Blomkamp's trilogy, or pseudo trilogy, as it were, because you have District 9, Elysium, and Chappie. I don't care much for Elysium, but I think Chappie and District 9 are very, very good films. And even going back to animated, you have like the Lion King trilogy. You have 1, 2, and 1.5. And there are some great things. Dark Knight trilogy is another one. Middling, I say Dark Knight is still the best in in that trilogy. Batman Begins is okay. Dark Knight Rises is okay. But The Dark Knight will always be considered one of the best achievements in superhero cinema, like bar none. And you can't say otherwise. Like, that is an amazing trilogy of films, and it'll go down as some of the best stories with Batman. Who knows, with the Batman that Matt Reeves is doing comes out, that may surpass The Dark Knight, in my opinion, as a great Batman film. It's not necessarily a great film with Batman. I think Dark Knight is a great film with Batman in it. I think The Batman has the potential to be the best Batman film, period. The Dark Knight is a great film, don't get me wrong, but I think The Batman has the potential to be the best film, period. And I'm looking forward to what the future holds for trilogies, because there's a lot that is starting to cap off, like the Captain America trilogy capped off with Civil War, which was phenomenal. As much as I think Civil War is an okay film, it's not a great film. I think the Captain America trilogy is a really cool character arc. Just watch all 3 films back to back to back. You see Captain America evolve as a character, and that's a really cool thing to watch. The Iron Man trilogy, as much as I'm not a big fan of 2 or 3 for that matter, I think Iron Man 1, 2, and 3 have a great arc for Tony Stark that also kind of encapsulates the Avengers quadrilogy that is essentially Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame are going to be one film in my mind. So I technically would count it as a trilogy, but only with the caveat that technically it's 4 films. And it's just, there's a lot in terms of really good trilogy. The Hotel Transylvania trilogy comes to mind as well. That is a great and heartwarming bit of old school Tex Avery in 3D animation style of film, and I dig that film. All 3 of those films are very, very good, and as a trilogy, I really do enjoy those as well. And I think with that kind of wraps up our talk on trilogies. Thank you guys for watching and or listening. You can follow me at Ken Reels on Twitter, Movie Nation Pod, all that jazz. And with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you guys so much. And we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to Movie Nation.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
You can like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Movie Nation Podcast. Or follow us on Twitter @Movie Nation Pod.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you.
If that's so, and you would like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, you can do so at the respective socials or send us an email, movienation@hotmail.com. That's movienation@hotmail.com. Or you can do so on our episode post over at movie-nation.com. That's movie-nation.com.
And tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
And you have the freedom to listen to us next time.
He's looking at you, kid.